you're thinking from the title, but no, this is a little bit mostly just me rage baiting you guys. No, Tasmania is not going to another general election. Although by the time I make this video, knowing the stability of our parliament, maybe they will be going to another election. But now I'm actually going to sum up what's happening in the Legislative Council, the upper house. So for those of you who don't know, Tasmania does have a parliament made up of a lower house, which is at the moment a sort of weird cobbling together of the right-wing Liberal Party and some centre-left independents, as well as the Greens, because the centrist Labour Party basically didn't want to negotiate with anyone to form a government. So now things are just sort of on a bill-by-bill basis as to what passes and what doesn't, which means that the upper house, the Legislative Council, is more important than ever. And as we can see, it's mostly independent, so it comes down to essentially what are the leanings of each independent, and, you know, what can parties get just to sort of build some degree of power, get some sort of energy, some sort of experience for some of our candidates who might want to consider other political roles in the future, and basically just how good each party is at campaigning, especially in sort of lower turnout election. So yeah, we'll see what happens. So we're just going to quickly sum up each of the seats. There's only 2 seats going up at the moment. So this is preferential voting, ranked choice voting in single member districts. As you can see, Independent held this seat of Huon, Independent, brief holdings of Labour in the 1940s and then again in the early 2020s. However, the last time this seat went up for election was in 2022. It's actually a by-election because Sodell was leaving the seat. I don't know the circumstances of that. It was very close. There's basically almost a 4-way tie between Labour, an Independent, Liberal, and a Green. It was a bit of a mess. However, it did end up in finally an Independent versus Labour count. The Independent won narrowly. I don't really remember. I haven't been able to find sources on who the Liberals and the Greens preferenced, but it must have been a fairly conservative-ish Independent if the Liberals were to preference them in front of Labour. And then you'd expect, if the Independent was that conservative, that's probably why the Greens would then preference Labour instead of preferencing an Independent. But it will be interesting to see. So what do I think is going to happen in this seat? Well, since 2022, the Liberal Party is nowhere near as popular as it used to be in Tasmania, but so is the Labour Party. I think the Labour candidate will probably drop some percentages of the vote, maybe go down to 20. I think the Liberals are not too popular in this seat. They might drop a little bit. I don't know if One Nation's running a candidate. I'll see who's actually been running. It's not actually said whether or not the Independent Dean Harris, who does hold the seat, will be running again. There's the Mayor of Kingsborough Council, Deputy Mayor of Kingsborough Council, has said that she will run for the seat. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but at the end of the day, when there's 2 independent candidates, the one that gets knocked out of the count tends to recommend preferences to the other, and that tends to hold a lot and be good for that candidate. So I think Labour's going to lose some ground. I think Liberals are going to lose some ground. I think that local vote will go all over the place. I don't know if the locals are going to run again at this election. The Greens have generally improved in Tasmania in the last couple of years. They tend to be polling nationwide quite well. However, that is still quite unpredictable at the moment. I think we're looking at a situation in which the Greens probably do overtake Labour and the Liberals, but I think the Independent candidate will make a decently strong gain. There might be a collective maybe 30% votes for the Independent. So how do I think things are going to happen? Independent, then Greens, then probably close between Labour and Liberals. I really don't know where preferences go after that. I feel like there's sort of an anger from Labour towards any an Independent or Greens candidate, so I don't know exactly who will benefit more from that preferences. I don't expect Labour to be preferencing the Liberals before both of them. I don't know even if Labour's going to preference anybody. Um, but yeah, I think this will likely be an independent first Greens count, unless the Liberals are knocked out early, give preferences to Labour. Labour probably leapfrogs for Greens, and then the Greens will probably preference the independent, putting the independent in. However, if Labour is knocked out, who knows where preferences go? Some to independent, some to Greens. Then the Liberals will very likely preference the independent, electing the independent. So, all things considered, I think independent Dean Harris will probably beat whoever is the final challenger, 55 to 45 or 56 to 44. Um, I think there are scenarios in which different parties win. I think if maybe Dean Harris doesn't perform very well, uh, Labour does end up first, or the Greens end up first, or the Liberals end up first, and maybe if Dean Harris does not get in that top two, then it could be Liberal versus Greens, in which case I think the Greens probably win. Liberal versus Labour, Labour probably wins. Labour versus Greens, I really don't know. I think the Liberals will preference Labour. I don't know who the Independent will preference. Yeah, we'll see how that goes, but I think it'll be a little bit of a mess in Huon, and I really don't know how it's going to go. Independents are always unpredictable, which makes all of this unpredictable because independents are quite strong in the Tasmanian upper house. Now we go to the seat of Rosevears. Now, how are we expecting that to go? So at the last election, it was pretty much a two-candidate race, and this looks like a big gap in the first preference. The Liberal candidate Joe Palmer wins quite easily over the Independent, which is formally aligned with the Labour Party, formally as in used to be Janie Finlay. Now, this was very close in two-party preferred count, about a 1 point gap, and it was certainly very narrow. Liberal gain from an independent, different independent. So how do I think it's going to go this time? Well, generally the crossbench has picked up support. We know the Greens have done a bit better in the area around Launceston in the last couple of elections. This was back in 2020, but when the Liberals were at the height of our power. I think the Liberals drop votes, and look at that margin. I don't think the Liberals are going to win this seat. I think they're going to lose it. I don't think Labor's going to run a strong enough campaign. I don't know how well the Greens might do. They might be able to punch through, but looking at the candidates, there is a declared Labour candidate, and the Greens have declared a candidate. I think there'll be an independent. I don't know. If there is an independent, I think they beat the Liberals. Like 56-44, maybe even 57-43. I think it'll be fairly easy. Maybe Labour could punch through. They could win they could win 55. No, they could even win more, 58-42 or something like that. I think if the Greens run a strong enough campaign, they get in the upper 20s, pick up enough preferences from everyone else, and maybe get some preferences from Labour. Depends how Labour sorts preferences or who goes where. I think then the Greens could stand a chance. I think it comes down to those Labour preferences. If Labour preferences Liberal second, I think it's like 55-45 or 56-44 victory for Liberals. I think if Labour preferences Greens, it could be like 53-47. I think that will decide a lot of it, but that's only if the Greens run a strong campaign. I don't really know the ground game in northern Tasmania. We'll just have to see how that plays out. But yes, this should be an interesting thing to watch. This is sort of lower profile for Australia, but this does mark, I think, 1 day short of a year anniversary of the last federal election, and less than a year since the last Tasmanian lower house election. So yeah, we'll just have to see how that plays out, and there might be some decent changes here for Tasmania in the future.